Hello ladies and gentlemen, Rusgif here and welcome to our fifth video tutorial on expression free. And today we are going to cover a slightly complicated topic, which is functions and delegates, before our next video, which is going to be on callbacks and events, which is literally the most important part of E3. So before we jump into that, I need to explain how functions work, how user functions work, so that you can create those callbacks in the next video. So let's begin. Right, so I'm going to start by creating a simple server block, and then I want to create my first user-defined function. Now, this function is simply going to take number A and number B, add them together, and give me the sum of those two numbers. And the way we do that is we first use the word function. We tell it that it's going to return a number. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call that add two numbers. Okay, and then I'm going to give it two arguments. So we've got number A and number B. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is just return A plus B, like that, and then I'm going to do system.print add two numbers, and I'm just going to say 10 and 20, and this will give me 30, right? So if I just pop that down, we'll see that we've got 30 there. Okay, now another thing you can do is, remember in the last video where I told you that you can do this, number A and B equals 1 and 2. You remember I showed you that? Well, I can do this. I can say equals add two numbers, 10 and 20, right? But here I could literally just return a second value. I can return a third value if I want from this function. So functions can return more than one value as long as all those values are of the same type. I'll demonstrate that now by simply returning A plus B as well as A minus B. Okay, so this will give me two numbers, 30 and minus 10. Okay, and just so we know, I'm going to do system.print down here, right? And I'm going to say A, and I'm going to set that to be A, and then I'm going to do the same but with B, and here we go. So you'll see that A is 30, B is minus 10. So that worked exactly as expected. Right, that's simple. Now we get on to the more complicated part of functions. So that was obviously defined our function, add two numbers, returns a number, it returns two numbers, okay, and it takes two numbers, yeah? Okay, that's cool, but sometimes you don't want to define a function before you use the function, okay? So what if I wanted my add two numbers function to be inline, okay? So I can define a function in an inline manner which creates the function as a variable rather than creating it as an actual defined function. So I can say function, and I'll do my func equals function, like that. And I can say here number A, and then I can return A plus 10 here. So this is just an example, okay? And as you can see, that's perfectly valid. So I've defined this function here in an just need to put that there. So I've defined this function here, my func, but I've done it in a completely roundabout way. However, this is a bit problematic because this function is a variable, and because it's a variable, I can't call it, okay? If I go to call my function here, it won't work. No such operation, there's no call operation for it because it's a variable. It's a variable of type function, but I can't call it. And the reason I can't call it is because the compiler needs to know two main important things about this function before it can call it. It needs to know what type it's going to return, and it needs to know how many values it's going to return. And as you can see, we haven't told the compiler that. The compiler knows that this function is going to return one value, and it knows it's going to return a number here. But the thing is, what if I was to define function my other func, and then I was to say that that equals my func, and then I tried to call that, right? Now, the compiler has no way of understanding that this variable here, which is defined in this manner to return one number, has been moved over here, and it has no idea what my other func is laid out like. Now, I know this probably doesn't make much sense now, but we'll get onto it. So what I need to do is, before I can call a function that's defined in this manner, I need to tell the compiler how to call it. And there's two ways to do that. One is delegate, one is invoke. The first one I'm going to show you is invoke because it's the simplest. Okay? So I want to call my other func, and I'm going to get a value out of it, right? So to do that, it's just system.invoke, right? And the first thing you want to do is tell the invoke command or the invoke function exactly what you want to get out of the function you're about to invoke. So I am going to tell this function that I want to get out of it a number. So I'll do that there. And the next thing I need to do is tell the invoke function how many values I'm expecting to get out of this function. So I expect to get one value out of this function, okay? And I'll define that there. Next thing I need to tell it is, what do I want to invoke? Well, I want to invoke my other function, which is here, okay? My other func. So let's do that. Let's put that there. The next thing I need to do is give it some arguments. Well, we only have one argument, which is a, and I'm going to throw in just any number there. So I'm going to throw in 10, okay? And I will obviously create a variable here, if I can learn to type. And we're just going to call that res, and system.print result, and we're just going to say res in here, like that. We're going to validate our code, and you can see it works. Close that down, pop that there, and you can see we get 20 out, so 10 plus 10 is 20, okay? Perfect. Yeah? Now, say I don't want to use system.invoke. For whatever reason, I don't want to use system.invoke, okay? Now, there is a way of telling the compiler how my other function, well, how to call my other function, right? So that I can actually do this, right? You know how it can't understand this because it doesn't know what that returns. It doesn't know how to handle the call to this my other function because we haven't told it. There is a way of telling it that, right? There is a way of telling it, and that's where delegates come in. So right here, I am going to, instead of defining my other function this way, I'm instead, first of all, going to define it as a delegate, right? So I'll comment this out, and I will do delegate. Oops, if I can spell it right, delegate. And a delegate is simply a way of telling the compiler, this is a template that you're going to apply to any function that I store in this particular variable, okay? So the first thing I need to do is I need to tell it what it's returning. So this is going to return a number. So delegate returns a number, and then I need to give the variable that I'm defining a template for a name, which in obviously is my other func, okay? Then I need to tell it what it takes. And I don't need to give these variables a name, okay? I just need to tell it what types it's going to take as its arguments, as its input parameters, right? So I'm just simply going to say, you take a number. Now, that's not enough though, right? Because I need to also tell it how many values it's going to return. So all I do is just return one in there. So that delegate basically says, hey compiler, I'm going to define a function variable called myOtherFunc, okay? However, if you ever want to call whatever's in myOtherFunc, then you're gonna, this is how it's going to be called. This is the data you need. So it's going to return a number and it's going to return one number, okay? I can tell it to return two numbers, it returns one number. Now, if you call this function now, myOtherFunc, nothing's going to happen because myOtherFunc contains nothing. It's a blank function, right? myOtherFunc does not do, excuse me, anything. It's going to break. So what I just do is I need to assign a function to it. So I'm just going to say myOtherFunc equals func. So I'm going to take the function defined here and I'm going to assign it onto this delegate. So it's going to use this template. And now I can call myOtherFunc normally as I would. You see how that's worked now? Not giving me an error. It's saying, yeah, okay, so you're putting myFunc into myOtherFunc. myOtherFunc, I know, is going to take a number, it's going to return a number, and it's only going to return one number. Perfect. I can do that. Now, just to make our result different from last time, I'm going to set this to 30, so it's going to output 40, right? Boom, place that down in the world, result 40, there we go. Job's a good one, and that's it. That's all you need to know on functions. Simple. Cool. Right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.